Okay, we're here with Jacob Jackson. Jacob, you are a great friend of mine. It is so good to have you on the show. You are undoubtedly one of the brightest minds I have ever been able to lay witness to. And this is so amazing to have you on the show to tell us about what you're seeing in the world of deep tech. Jacob is a principal at Julian Capital, and he's also a GM at DeepChecks. Jacob, okay, what is Julian Capital? What is DeepChecks? Tell me what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Super excited to do this with you, Marcus. So Julian Capital is a pre-seed and seed stage deep tech fund. We invest across all categories of deep tech, everything from new biotech companies like an artificial womb that we've invested in that can, grow fetuses outside of the human body, as you
That is
might,
insane. Oh my
all the
God.
way to new kinds of jet engines for aerospace, to robotics companies that are redoing surgeries in the brain, to all kinds of new materials, discovery platforms, energy companies, all kinds of really cool technologies that we invest in at the earliest stage possible. So that's Julian Capital.
Your days must be always surprising you with new things that, you could have never imagined even existed in the first place.
Totally. We want more of them. We're always searching for incredibly ambitious founders trying to change the world in all kinds of creative ways. And we're looking to meet and back and fund more founders. And then when we do back them, we don't just give them capital, but we help with growth and design. So we're all ex-growth people. I worked with you long ago in a company doing growth and revenue. Julian, who founded the firm, is a growth expert that's run growth for a couple of billion-dollar companies. And he started a growth agency called Demand Curve that worked with literally hundreds of companies on their growth strategy and execution. Companies like LinkedIn, Ancestry.com, other huge tech companies. And so he spends a big chunk of his time working with our portfolio companies, helping them build their growth engines. We also have a design team that builds all of the brands, logos, and websites for our portfolio companies. And we do that from the ground up. We maintain it all and we redo it as they change and grow into later stages in their journey as a company.
Wow, that's huge. I mean, one thing that we saw back in our time together when we were working at that startup is that the best investors are not the ones who are just giving cash. They're the ones who are actually invested in the business. They're helping on the front lines. And so it sounds like, what's really unique about Julian Capital is actually getting invested at the front lines there. So
So
with all these companies that are doing incredible innovation in deep tech, how do you even find them? How do they get discovered? There's no existing market for some of these things.
yeah, well, great segue into the other half of what we do, which is a product that we built. So we've actually built two products as a venture firm, which is also kind of rare. The first one, which is called vcsheet.com, it's just a place where founders can go and find lists of all of the investors that are a match to the sector and stage that they are raising money in. So if you're a biotech founder at the pre-seed, you can go and find a list of all the investors who invest at the pre-seed. You can learn about each investor, and so that you can come prepared to a meeting with that fund and actually have a higher chance of success. So that's an informational site. It's the third largest by traffic in terms of fundraising data after PitchBook and Crunchbase. Our second product is deepchecks.vc, which is more relevant to the question that you asked, which is a matching platform for founders who are looking to raise a round in deep tech. They submit their deck. We filter them down to the ones that we think are venture backable. And we share those every 3 weeks with literally hundreds of investors who could be a match for their company. And we match them based on the sector and stage and the amount of capital that they're raising, at what valuation they're raising. And then investors can reach out directly to the founder, and the founder could get like 15 calls with investors in the same week and really accelerate their fundraise towards a closing in a short timeline versus it dragging out for months on end.
Yeah, that's huge. So effectively, this is like the genesis of a channel for deep tech companies to get discovered, get investment. Did anything exist like this before? And like, if not, if this is really like the first wave of it, what's been the impact on this? Like, what have you guys seen?
Yeah, so Julian tried this before with a product called Seed Checks, which was for any kind of startup.
Yeah.
including software, apps, marketplaces, all that kind of thing. It wasn't quite as big a success as deep tech's, because the problem that deep tech founders face is there's actually not that many investors that understand your niche technology sector and customer that actually could back you. And so it's really hard to find those, 10 or so pre-seed funds that could actually write you a check, versus in software there's thousands more funds and they're all more generalist software investors, and you can create a funnel with enough investors and find enough people to back your company. But in deep tech it's really hard to find those perfect fits, and so that's what deep tech's has unlocked, and it's actually worked really, really well. We launched it 2 years ago and we've had almost 10,000 founders submit to deep tech's. We've had over 100 million in capital deployed through the platform that we know of. We don't know what everything happens around the platform. We try to get investors to tell us all the deals that they do, and we always are uncovering more that happened in them. So tons of capital is getting deployed, and founders are really, really happy with the help. And I guess I should say, like, all of this is free. It's not like we're not charging to match people or anything like that. It's just a simple app that we've made.
Yeah, I mean, the win-win is for both sides in the market. It's for the deep tech companies who are trying to get distribution, get noticed, and then it's for the VCs to be really like matched with, their particular interests of where they want to make that next bet.
Exactly. Just as hard as founders are working to find investors, investors are working, maybe more because it's our full-time job, whereas a founder is actually running a business and trying to fundraise,
Mhm.
where we are all we care about is finding the next investment to make.
Yeah.
And so we're working just as hard as them to find it. And so this helps.
Okay, so the whole world, Jacob, of VC is changing a lot, though, especially in the world of software. You can now Claude code an app and be able to make it secure, hardened, scalable in a weekend. And so the need to hire, a 500K engineering team to get things off the ground and running, that's just not there, because it can be solved with $140 a month of software, $200 a month of software. So in deep tech, that's not the same, right? We're like, you can't use Claude Code to build a large Hadron Collider or to build a artificial womb.
Yeah.
So how have you seen the landscape, with what's going on in AI changing the world of software, driving what's going on in the world of deep tech, and how investors are looking to make smart bets and invest in the right companies?
Yeah, well, I'll come back to the investor side, but I think it's worth pointing out that AI is also making these companies more viable. So 10 years ago, if you were trying to build the artificial womb company, first of all, the science wasn't there, but let's say it was, you can't move nearly as fast as you can today when all information is at your fingertips. Anything you want to learn, you can learn in a few hours with these LLMs. And engineers are just so much more capable than they've ever been because of AI. And so something that in deep tech that may have taken 15 or 20 years before is now finally doable in 10, because of the speed that people can move with access to AI. And so, which is the venture timeline, like venture investors want to get their capital back within 10 years. So all these companies are finally investable when they may not have been 10 years ago. So AI has unlocked the ability to do deep tech, even if you're not actually building the things you built with Claude Code, for example. So that's the first thing. So I think AI has made it more likely for deep tech to succeed. So investors are looking for a better place to put their capital. We've seen the SaaS crash in the public markets. It's unclear if a vertical SaaS company is going to be able to maintain a defensible moat against competitors when you can spin up a competing product in a weekend with Claude Code. And so investors are scared to back apps, SaaS companies, these kinds of things, because they don't know in 5 years if that business is going to be defensible. And so tons of investors are looking for technology companies to put their money into that can actually withstand competition through patents, compounding data moats, hopefully network effects for their technology, things that really can stand up over time.
If we think about those things for AI, deep tech has some kind of strategy that makes them investable. So, like, what are the things that you hear coming from a deep tech company that makes you be like, yeah, they've got it?
Okay. So first of all, team matters more than ever. So do you have the few people in the world on your team that are able to actually build this technology for the first time? And so, like, one of our investments is in a company called Olive Atomics. They are building a small modular nuclear reactor specifically designed for data center power off grid. The founder was a Canadian, like us, and he built a software company here. He sold that company, great exit, and then decided he wanted to do something way bigger. And he's always been passionate about nuclear. So he went out and met with hundreds of people in the nuclear industry and found the one team that had actually built a new nuclear reactor in the last 50 years and recruited them out of a national lab in the US to be his co-founder and then early scientist. And so
Yeah.
they had a huge head start on the technology because they have literally the only team that's done this in a long time, and they hit the ground running. So that is like the perfect example of, you know, the team to make this happen. He went out and found them or built that team and then made it happen. So that's like key and very crucial to deep tech. The second is, can it reach venture scale in the time frame that we're looking for? So that's one thing we really care about. Is like, first, how big is the market? Is the market ready today, or is it going to be in 30 years? Well, that's not investable. So how big can this get within 8 to 10 years, including all of the R&D that needs to happen, product development, regulatory, and then scale up? Can it happen in that time frame? And then, of course, after that, we want to look at like, what is the competitive landscape? Like, are the big companies that are operate in this space, can they go out and hire a few people and compete with you? Or is there something that you're doing that's independently different than what they're able to do? Will it cannibalize their own business if they try to work in this space, essentially blocking them from ever being able to compete with you? The best example of this is like the car companies. When Tesla built an EV, the car companies couldn't go and build an EV because it would cannibalize their existing business, which was heavily weighted towards maintaining these mechanical internal combustion vehicles where they make all of their money on the maintenance and repairs, right? And so if they were to build an EV that has none of that, then they would lose a huge portion of their business. And so finally, after 10 years or 15 years, they all decided to copy Tesla and build an EV business. And they realized that they lost money on every EV. They were losing money in their core maintenance. And so they all dropped their EV divisions. And now Tesla has, full reign of EV in the US.
Back to square one.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously there's lots of EV companies in China and other places, but Ford just got their Lightning truck, and everyone's just kind of dropped their EV arms because they weren't profitable and they were eating into their core business. So that's like a structural advantage that an upstart has, where they're able to build a business without competition from incumbents because the incumbents are structurally unable to compete with them.
When you put on that lens and you think about timing, what are some of the companies that you're seeing right now that have the right timing, they have the right defensibility to grow because it would cannibalize an incumbent's existing business? What are some of those specific companies, if you're able to talk about them, that shine through right now?
Atomics has timing better than anything we've ever seen in terms of the tailwinds that are supporting this business. The technology for nuclear has been available for a long time. They could have built this company probably technologically anytime in the last few decades. But socially, people were not willing to have nuclear reactors in every city and state around the country, which is what they're going to do when they build these small modular reactors. But this shift in social acceptance towards nuclear has been huge in just the last few years. Then on top of social, you have a regulatory tailwind where the current administration in the US is actually bipartisan, but the administration is pushing this forward to have new rules around new regulatory frameworks for how nuclear can be approved and built in the United States. And something we've just never had that in the last 50 years, where you could get something approved in under a year, which is what they're moving towards.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So that tailwind. You have the third big one. There's probably more, but the third really big one is the AI boom, which is you can build an AI data center in 18 months, but you can't connect it to the grid for almost 3 years. And so even if you are to build it really quickly, it could just sit there waiting for access to power. And then you have the social pushback of, well, now our electricity prices in the area are going to go up because this data center is pulling more electricity. There's all these reasons why the data center needs off-grid power. They need to build their own power, connect it to the data center as quickly as you can build the data center, and get off to the races. And so there's never been demand for small modular reactors like there is right now from data centers.
Amazing. And so, yeah, it's this perfect storm of legislative changes allowing this technology to evolve and get accepted and permitted quickly, and then the demand factors of needing energy on premise when the infrastructure is available. And so you mentioned this is happening in the US. Are other countries, is this like a global initiative? Are we seeing this happen in Canada? Like, what's going on with actually being able to accelerate the innovation outside of just the US, which has always been like this innovation hub?
Yeah, I think the US has, as you say, always been the leader in these kinds of things. They kind of take the risks that nobody else is willing to take, accept the failures if they happen. That's part of the US culture. And then once they've proven it out, everyone follows. And so Canada is actually really great on nuclear. We have huge proportion of our power in like some provinces like Ontario come from nuclear, but they're not leading the way on small modular, at least not from a startup new technology standpoint like they are in the US. All of the nuclear reactor startups are for the most part in the US. So in Canada, I guess we will probably follow suit once it's been proven in the US.
What's the harm in Canada sticking their neck out and trying to lead the way on innovating and policy? Like, why do you think that they actually don't do that?
Because our culture is risk averse. Nobody wants to be the one that's name is behind the mistake that might happen, or that could potentially happen. These nuclear reactors are super safe. Nothing is going to happen. But everyone is so afraid to put their name as the one that was, if it did have a meltdown or something, that I was the politician that put my name behind being the first to try this. So I think there's just a risk averse culture that we have here that prevents them from wanting to be the first to take a chance.
How do you think, like in the case specifically of nuclear, the need for enriched uranium in order to be able to, provide the fuel for the nuclear sites is at tension with, the harm that can be done when uranium is enriched, by different countries or organizations that might pose a risk to society?
Canada has one of the top deposits of uranium in the world. We have some enrichment capacity, but it's really difficult to not only technologically to enrich uranium to a high enriched state, not as high as weapons grade, but as high as like most reactors need. But it's also regulatorily tough now because there's just decades and decades of built up blockers and paperwork and approvals and things in order to get to an enrichment that you would need for most reactors. That's just really, really, really hard to do. And there's only a few companies in the world that actually, outside of Russia and China, that actually have this capacity. So one of the really strategic things is using low enriched uranium, much lower enrichment levels than other companies. And what that leads to is it means you have to refuel more frequently. But because they're modular, they actually have a redundant architecture where they have, let's say, you want to have 5 10-megawatt reactors that total up to 50 megawatts. Instead of doing 5, they just do 6 reactors for a 50-megawatt turbine. And every year they can take one down, refuel it. Like cloud architecture, it's like having a bunch of Docker containers that you can like take one down and have redundancy. Well, these guys, they're doing that on a nuclear level.
Oh God, I love that. So that reminds me of, this book, How Big Things Get Done. The book has amazing examples of big projects that have failed and the reasons why they fail, and ones that succeed and the reasons why they succeed. There's many factors that go to it. One of the core ones is that Lego brick concept. Can you just repeat and build upon with the same brick? Because that proves its scalability. It sounds like that's exactly what these guys have done.
Yeah.
You talk about like the bigger stream of things. So the AI boom has caused this need for energy. The need for energy being on premise and easily accessible when the data center is ready has driven a need for something like nuclear reactors to be on site, on premise. And then in order to give the fuel that's needed for those reactors, there's a need to just extract uranium and mining. So what are you seeing on the mining front of things? And then is there even a deep tech opportunity a layer below mining?
Robotics is going to be huge for mining. Like I have this background that I usually use in meetings. There's like a swarm of robots doing mine instead of like a pit mine.
I've
They
seen
open
that one.
it.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like an idea that I would love to back if a company came along that was doing this really well, where you have all the different use cases of robotics that you need to do: drill holes, gather rocks, maybe use camera technology or something to find out where to dig next. Discovery robots, all these kinds of things. You bring them all together and you can much more efficiently extract the resources out of an area than the traditional massive open pit mine, massive vehicles, tons of energy required to crush all the rock in that entire pit, when there's certain areas that are much more valuable than others. So that's one category. There's tons of companies that we've seen around discovery, around processing after the mine. But in terms of your question around what is AI pushing forward, transmission is huge. So yeah, you can have some data centers that are off grid, but we have to get power around from production to use, and we're extremely limited by transmission of power. So we have another company that we invested in called Path Power that's doing a robot for drilling and trenches underground and pulling the transmission lines with them. So
That's
overhead
amazing.
transmission lines cause a huge proportion of all wildfires. They're ugly. Some people don't want them going over their farmland or in their backyard.
Mhm.
So it's really hard to build new transmission lines, and it's not very safe to do so. So these guys are going to go underground. So they go under the farmland, under the city, whatever, and just bring the transmission lines everywhere we need them to go in order to power EVs, robotics in the home. Everything is going to require way more electricity going forward, and we just need to build more transmission.
So I was watching this show, one of my favorite shows to watch with my fiance. We love this show called Trafficked by Mariana Van Zeller. And she basically goes into like the deep underworld black market things that are going on. And each episode is like a different theme. It could be, fentanyl or MDMA or 3D printed guns. This whole, like, there's so many of them. It's wild. She has the most cojones of any person I've ever seen on television to go in and like sit down across the table from a drug lord with like AK-47s behind her. Like it's insane. One of the episodes she did, and this ties back to what you're seeing in deep tech, is it was surrogate mothers. Basically, babies being had with surrogate mothers who are from the Ukraine. And this is like a huge business. It's illegal to do this in the Ukraine, but moms are getting paid thousands of dollars over there to carry the babies of, people from around the world who are looking to have a surrogate mother. So you talked about like artificial wombs as being something in deep tech. I mean, can we dive more into that and potentially even other deep tech examples where it could be shaking the fabric of what otherwise, are industries that are just circumventing, like, what is actually allowed in the world?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people are gonna, feel triggered by, this technology, and I understand that. But there are so many people who want to have children and can't, and go to desperate lengths, like you've mentioned, in order to make that happen. And then there's these markets that come up that are questionable in terms of their ethics and how they're treating people in, far poorer circumstances or desperate circumstances, to be surrogates for a few shekels compared to what the people in the wealthier nations are able to afford. And so we believe that this is a really, really good thing for society, not only to clean up these like black market surrogate situations, but also just to grow the population in families that really, really want children, and to give them that opportunity when they have a problem with their fertility, or they're too old. You could even store eggs, and then when you're past the reproductive age, you could still have more children. If we're going to live longer with all the longevity technology that's out there, then maybe we can have kids later as well, or continue to have kids into a later stage of our life. So that's the end goal. But similar to SpaceX, where the end goal is like getting to Mars, but they've been able to build all of these businesses along the way launch to low Earth orbit. They've been able to do Starlink. Now they're going to do data centers in space. And these are all businesses that are unlocked by the long-term vision. It's the same for this company, where the long-term vision is potentially artificial surrogacy. But in the meantime, they can do all these incredible businesses around tissue production in their robotic womb. If you have type 1 diabetes and your pancreas is shot, they could create personalized tissue that could be implanted and act like pancreatic tissue and eliminate type 1 diabetes. Or they could do all kinds of things in that area. They can also replace primates that are being used for placental research. So in order to understand the placenta, which is the connection between the fetus and the mother, researchers will have to literally like give a toxin to a pregnant primate, then sacrifice the primate and measure the result for research so we can help better understand diseases like preeclampsia, or HELP syndrome or others like that. And so this robot could replace that research and save, I don't know, maybe thousands of primate lives that are being used for research, and mice as well. You could also grow lab mice for research. There's all kinds of incredible things that you can do once you start tackling an impossible vision like that. You have breakthroughs that unlock new businesses and a new way forward.
I swear, Jacob, you literally have the coolest job in the world. And in order to be good at this and to understand, like, you have to have no bounds as to how far the imagination can go, and to envision what the actual impact is, on not just like in the near term, but bigger than life itself, bigger than the timeframes that we'll probably ever live to see. That is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it is a wonderful job. I feel incredibly lucky to do it. And it's not just the technology and the vision that's super exciting, but getting to meet with founders who have so much passion for what they're doing on a daily basis is really energy giving. You come off a 30-minute call with a founder, they've just explained their vision for the future, and you just get to be part of that and absorb that. And then when you invest in the companies that you align with and fully believe in, you get to then spend time on a weekly basis sometimes with these incredible founders. So that's the best part of the job. And I will add that I don't think that the way that we invest was possible even just 5 years ago, because we're just a tiny team. We're 3 people. We're investing in biotech, aerospace, materials, energy, robotics, all kinds of different markets. And we don't have like any experts on our team. We don't have like a bio expert or a robotics expert. We're just 3 people. And the reason we can do this today and couldn't 5 years ago is, again, thanks to AI. We can meet a company. We can take what we've learned, spend 3 hours with Claude, and become like 80% proficient in that technology, sector, customer desires, all these things that are available on the internet, and just absorb it incredibly fast. Then we can send a set of follow-up questions to the founder based on everything we've learned that same day. They can reply to us because founders are working 24/7 that night. We can get on a second call with them the next day. And we're now at like a whole nother level of being able to communicate with them than we were on the first call, because we've done that extra research. And so it's not this, you could not do this 5 years ago, and now you can.
What kind of advice would you give them to be able to take something that is maybe a dream of theirs, and if they have the ambition to pursue it, where should they get started?
Yeah, absolutely. If building a company is a wonderful thing, and it's a great option for many people, but for more people, joining a company that is building something that you firmly believe in and are extremely inspired by is a far better option. We have this idea that as AI is changing the way that we work on like literally a monthly basis right now, and just accelerating, the job title that used to define people in their career is far less important than what inspires you, because you're going to be doing different things in a year than you are today anyway. And so we built a tool on deepchecks.vc to reverse job board, match people with companies that they're inspired by, rather than ignoring their, whether they're a product manager or a salesperson or whatever, focusing in on what is the technology or future that they're excited about, and then giving them the list of companies that are a match for that excitement. And then they can go and start working with that company in some small way, create a job opening, get to know the founders or the leaders there, and wheel their way into that company because they're going to be passionate to make it work. And this is, I think that's the most important thing that anyone should focus on when doing a job hunt, is finding a company that inspires them. The other thing on the company building side that this affects is Meta is hiring AI engineers for $100 million, right? Everyone's seen these headlines. But companies that we've invested in who are doing far more interesting things have been able to hire equally good AI engineers for 100th of that or less, because they've made money. They'd way rather work on something that they're passionate about, and they'll literally give up $100 million offer at one of these big companies to go work for a startup that they're excited about for $500,000 or something like that. And so the advantage to a founder on a team in building something exciting is that you can attract the best talent in the world to come work on this for you, work on this with you at a far more affordable price.
Yeah, for a lot of people who have this anxiety that AI is going to replace their jobs, this is a perfect example of how AI can be used to actually make people's job search, their careers, more fulfilling and better. Because instead of just like doing a job to put bread on the table and ends meet, now you can actually put your attention and focus into things that truly inspire, that truly innovate and mean something to you. And there's matching that can help you in that journey. Um, Jacob, you've unveiled an amazing world of deep tech, I think, to a lot of people who maybe haven't heard about it, or those who are in it and just don't know how they would go about turning their vision into a reality. But it sounds like with Julian Capital, Deep Checks, and the whole team, what you guys are doing, what you're building, that you're making this future a reality. So that's amazing. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. We're just a tiny little catalyst to the work that the founders are doing, but I really appreciate it. And I love my job, and I feel very lucky to be in this space. So, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
There's always room for you, Jacob. Always. I want to ask you something. I haven't asked this to everybody. I think I asked it maybe one time. If you were to have like a message on a billboard that could go up today, millions of people would be able to go by and see it. You can think about this for a second. What would that message say?
Something that resonated with me recently is you can just do things. I don't know if you've seen this online, but it's this idea of like, it's incredible how attainable some things are if you just do it. You just try it. Like, we've been trying to set up this deep tech summit, and we just started with who are literally the number one people in the world that we'd want to have in the summit, and let's just try and get them first. And if we don't get them, then we'll go down, we'll move down. And we got some of them. We just like cold emailed people.
That's sick.
We got incredible speakers to join this summit because we just tried. And I'll credit Julian with that mentality of just the sky is the limit. And he pushes us to do that. And it's really incredible that you can really just do things.